Living in the 21st century, there's a lot of technological advancements that we use every single day to improve our lives and maybe even make them better than people who lived 50 or 60 years ago. But when it pertains to the automotive world, in 30 to 40 years of development, fundamentally, not much has changed. Sure, we have full digital gauge clusters now and in-depth user interfaces and maybe even better overall driving dynamics even for regular consumer cars. But as consumers, we've been waiting for the future to arrive, and it just doesn't seem as though it's gotten here yet. Because as kids, we were told that we were going to have flying cars, we're going to live in this futuristic world, and really it just seems as though that we're living an extension of the 90s and the early 2000s. But I believe that the 2023 Mercedes Benz EQS SUV is going to propel us to that future we've always wanted to experience. And in this video, we're going to take a deep dive into this SUV, check out all the features that this crossover comes with, also see if going with an EV over a gas-powered model is viable at this price range, and also see why, if you are looking for a premium luxury crossover or SUV, then maybe taking a look at the EQS might be a great decision. Now, before we get in this video, I want to give a huge shout and thank you to Mercedes Benz of Burlington in Burlington, Massachusetts, for allowing me to do this review. Their link will be in the description below, so you can check out their extensive Mercedes Benz inventory. Also, before we get started, make sure to hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell so you're notified every time a new video goes live on the channel. And so, without wasting any further time, let's get right in this review. There's many questions that surround the world of EVs, not the least of which is range and recharge times. But consumers wonder what the future holds and how brands such as Mercedes-Benz will craft and develop vehicles that are better in every aspect than the cars we drive today. The EQS SUV may provide the answers we all crave, as both outwardly and inwardly, this premium luxury crossover demonstrates that legacy manufacturers have a better handle on what buyers want in the 2020s, while also offering a build quality that only the Germans are capable of. Starting off with pricing, the EQS 580 we have today is the premium trim, coming in at $125,900, which is the base model. You can opt for the exclusive or pinnacle to elevate the level of opulence even further. But as we'll discover, this EQS is offering a plethora of features that should get everyone excited. Built on a dedicated EV platform, Mercedes-Benz is now positioned to take on the Tesla Model X, BMW iX, and Rivian R1S directly. But as we've seen from legacy manufacturers, these new chassis tend to leave much more to be desired. Yet Mercedes managed to engineer this EV to have the same characteristics that we see from the gas-powered alternatives in the lineup. When it pertains to the dimensions, the EQS SUV will be similar in size to the Rivian R1S, but will outclass the Model X and iX, while also offering an optional third row. Ground clearance comes in at right around 8.7 inches, and with a dedicated off-road mode, you at least have the capability of taking the paths less traveled. For EVs that are underpinned by platforms that were built from the ground up and not related to conventional cars, designs can be controversial and far too futuristic for the average consumer. Mercedes-Benz's approach of evolving rather than trying to revolutionize their products allows the EQS SUV to integrate seamlessly into the lineup. And by sharing many cosmetic features with the sedan it's based on, this crossover does look rather car-like. The smooth angles, rounder front fascia, and free-flowing aesthetics will certainly garner attention, as the LED light bar that sits just above the non-functional grille and connects to the daytime running lights is both trendy and modern. Despite pushing the envelope, the EQS doesn't scream and shout that it's an EV, and instead propels the brand's identity and appearance into a whole new era. Moving over to the side profile, our model is sitting on 21-inch AMG multiple spoke wheels with black accents, which comes equipped on EQS SUVs with the AMG line exterior package. Out of all the features, performance figures, and technology that could draw your attention, it's the adaptive air suspension, adaptive dampers, and four-wheel steering that makes this crossover the premium luxury EV we've all been waiting for. Not only does the EQS offer a plush and cushioned ride, but for a vehicle of this size, when maneuvering in the city, the turning radius gives you the confidence and assurance that you can park this EV anywhere or get around objects in the road. That agility brings versatility, which in turn helps make the EQS handle a lot smaller than it really is. You'll have power folding side mirrors with turn signal indicators, to go along with blind spot detection for added safety. Then coming around to the back, this is where the EQS does appear to be similar in design to the old R-Class, where it doesn't follow the same on-road demeanor as the GLE or GLS, and in fact, its smoother body lines, athletic C-pillars, and longer dimensions gives this crossover more of a lifted station wagon look. The illuminated light bar that runs the length of the rear fascia is a signature feature found across the EQ family of vehicles, but also makes this model look futuristic. Capping off the appearance of the EQS, contrasting chrome accents as a traditional design feature that's seen for many gas-powered models from Mercedes-Benz. When it comes to performance, the EQS SUV 580 is powered by dual electric motors to produce 536 horsepower and 633 pound-feet of torque, and you'll also have a range of 285 miles. In typical Mercedes-Benz fashion, this premium luxury EV puts most of the emphasis on ride comfort rather than taking the Tesla approach of heart-pounding accelerations and eye-opening 0 to 60 times. That's not to say that the EQS isn't capable of an exhilarating driving experience, as you're looking at getting up to highway speeds in 4.5 seconds. But most of your initial impressions will center around this EV's gracefulness as it glides down city and suburban streets. Rather than feeling like a separate entity, this crossover performs and drives very much like the gas-powered vehicles that Mercedes-Benz offers, and that should appeal to customers who've purchased an S-Class or GLS in the past. Stepping inside the EQS, you're immediately immersed into a spaceship-like cabin, as you'll find screens all along the dashboard, including a head unit for the front row passenger, who can adjust their own climate control, volume, and even access the navigation and vehicle settings to give them some control on longer drives, but to also keep them fully engaged. Before checking out the digital gauges and infotainment system, let's focus on the interior comfort, as our model is equipped with power-adjustable, heated, ventilated, and massaging leather seats, with both the driver and passenger having 3-position memory for added convenience. Unlike some rivals, bolstering certainly wasn't passive, as these seats hug you to provide the right amount of support and security. And if you prefer a more luxurious experience, you can upgrade to Nappa leather for a higher quality upholstery. Then in front of you, as part of the winter package, a heated Nappa leather steering wheel will complement the upscale and smooth handling of the EQS to make daily commutes more than enjoyable. By using the touchpad and buttons mounted on the left side of the wheel, you can fully control and customize what you see on the digital gauge cluster. And as we first experienced with the new C-Class, Mercedes-Benz simplified this display by cutting down on the menus, but also improved the functionality and intuitiveness by allowing you to have the navigation map either dominate the screen or sit between the gauges for a traditional layout. More importantly, and we'll eventually see this across the product line, this updated technology is very much on par with rivals such as Audi and Porsche. Then moving over to the infotainment system, a 17.7-inch touchscreen will undoubtedly dominate the interior, and it will likely be what you gravitate towards first. Instead of being a tablet or a separate piece like we see from legacy manufacturers, this user interface is embedded into the dashboard, and despite its size, is easily within arm's reach of the driver. You'll have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility to go along with onboard navigation and augmented reality when plugging in a destination you want to travel to. And standard will be the Burmester 3D surround sound system. Much like the digital gauge cluster, this head unit has been simplified with a cleaner and more straightforward menu screen, where you can quickly and easily adjust the comfort settings, change the ambient lighting, access the climate controls, which can be found at the bottom of the screen, and also customize your driving experience, whether that be through the different drive modes or the sound experiences that will offer an audible tone when accelerating. If you're familiar with recent Mercedes-Benz products, the touchpad that was placed on the center console will not be present for this new generation of vehicles, and instead there'll be a thin row of haptic feedback buttons for the volume control, park assist features, drive mode selector, and it's here where the start-stop button can be found. Lastly, you'll have a number of different camera angles to help you navigate your way through tighter parking spots or city streets. Continuing on to the center console, concealed and tucked away are two USB-C inputs and a cubby to store your phone. And of course, there'll be two cup holders that will lock your drink into place so it won't spill all over the interior. For the center storage compartment, you'll have plenty of room for smaller items. And beneath the centerpiece, you'll find two more USB-C inputs and more storage for maybe a purse or a bag. And rounding out the front seating area, above, a panoramic moonroof will let in a lot of natural light to the interior. Now moving on to the second row, we're going to start off on the passenger side. And this seat has been adjusted all the way back and is somewhat on a recline. And I have more than enough legroom to work with back here. Now, due to the size of the EQS SUV, you can't opt for a third row, but most likely you will stick to a two-row configuration because from what I've seen from other reviews with the third row, it is pretty cramped back there. So if you want everyone to be comfortable, you're going to want to stick to a two-row model. What I love about this SUV is that the second row seats are adjustable. You can move them forwards and backwards. Also, the outboard seats are very aggressively bolstered and supportive, giving you that upscale refinement and quality that you want to experience in a vehicle in this price range. Now, when it comes to headroom, we do have plenty of it, even with the massive panoramic moonroof. And I think someone around the height of 6 feet tall and above can sit back here pretty comfortably and not have to worry about hitting their head on the headliner. Then moving on to the center seat, I do believe you can fit a third person back here, no problem, because there is no aggressive center hump at all, so it's completely flat, giving you a lot of legroom, but also this vehicle, because of its size, you have a lot of shoulder room as well. And what I have noticed during my time with this vehicle and filming it, the cabin is massive, so there's a lot of space both up front and the second row, and I think people of all shapes and sizes can sit back here pretty comfortably. Then, moving on to the driver's side, this seat has been adjusted to someone of my height, around 5'5". And there's just a lot of legroom here where I can just sit back, relax, and enjoy the driving experience. But also, if I am going to an event and I have my driver taking me there, I can ride in comfort. And this is really where premium luxury is at its finest. And really, when you compare it to other rivals in this segment, I think of the BMW iX. This is actually, I think, superior to that BMW. Also back here, you do have 3-level heated outboard seats to go along with 2 USB-C inputs. And rounding out the second row seating area, you do get a center armrest with 2 cup holders. Now coming around to the back, you're going to receive a power lift gate. And by pressing down on the emblem, the lift gate will open automatically. And inside, behind the second row seats, you're looking at right around 31 cubic feet of room to work with, which actually falls a bit short compared to the BMW iX and Tesla Model X. I was surprised seeing that because this is very spacious. I was able to fit all my camera gear today, no problem. But also, if you are going on a road trip with the family, I think you could fit probably 6, 7, possibly 8 bags of luggage back here because you do have a higher roof line, but also of how wide this cargo area really is. So it's very practical, but also I think that this is more than enough for most buyers in this market. Then with the second row seats folded, you're looking at right around 63 cubic feet. So that cargo space doubles in size. I do believe that if you are looking for the most practicality out of your EQS SUV, you're going to want to go with the 2-row configuration because cargo space will diminish a bit with that third row. Then on the right side of the rear cargo area, you will notice 2 buttons that automatically lower and raise those second row seats. So when they're not in use, you can fold them and now you can fit all your storage and all your items back here. Then on the left side of the rear cargo area, you will notice some netting where you can probably fit some small water bottles, maybe even a first aid kit. Then beneath the floor mat, you are going to find additional storage, which this will most likely be for your charging cables and maybe some other smaller items that you can hide back here and keep out of sight if you do leave this vehicle unattended for a while. And then finally, one feature that I really like is the rear cargo cover, which will keep all your valuable items out of sight. So if you are like me and you have camera gear with you or anything else that is irreplaceable, you can leave them back here and have that peace of mind knowing that nobody will peek in and steal what you have. And then once you're done, just press the button and the liftgate will close automatically. And we have ignition. It feels like you're driving a spaceship here. So let's go take the EQS SUV out for a test drive. Let's see how this SUV performs on the road, and if this really is a next generation premium luxury vehicle that is well worth the price at just over $130,000 for the model I'm driving today. Now, we can dispute what the future of the automobile is going to be when it comes to what's powering it, whether it is EV, hybrid, or an internal combustion engine. But what we can't dispute is where the direction the automotive industry is heading in, especially when it comes to what you see in front of you with a full digital gauge cluster, massive, and I mean massive infotainment system, and then that third screen for the passenger. This is definitely going to trickle down to more affordable markets at some point, probably maybe 10, 15 years down the road. But this is really beginning to feel as though that we're finally propelling into that next generation of vehicle, and also the future, more importantly. Some of the features that are equipped on the EQS SUV are adaptive suspension, adaptive dampers, and also four-wheel steering, which I want to start off with because for most consumers who are looking at buying an SUV of this size, they may feel very apprehensive, where they start wondering, oh, is it very maneuverable? Can I get myself out of tight spots? Especially since maybe I live in the city or the suburbs, and maybe it's going to feel very cumbersome and not very easy to drive around. But because we have the four-wheel steering, handling is phenomenal. You can go around corners very easily, especially for an SUV of this weight and size, but also everything is smooth with this vehicle. The handling and the coring ability is exactly what you would expect from a sedan, but since it is an SUV, we do have the higher ground clearance. So you're going to have right around 9 inches of ground clearance, which is pretty good because you can go off-road with this vehicle if you so desire, but also living up here in New England, we can take on unplowed roads during the winter. And you do sit pretty high up in this vehicle, so you do have a nice commanding feel over the road. You can see everything around you. One thing that is something worth noting is the fact that the dashboard does sit pretty high up, so it does take away from your visibility to a certain degree, or at least that perception, because you do have a nice panoramic view. A-pillars are somewhat aggressive, so keep that in mind. The side mirrors are very big actually, so you can see what is behind you. Also, of course, we do have the blind spot detection. And then looking out back, you do have a smaller rear window, and the headrest might get in the way, but I can see that everything is behind me. So starting this review off in comfort mode, it's nice and relaxed, laid back. Also, it's very quiet in here. The lack of road noise is phenomenal, and you feel as though you're in your own little bubble. Now, when it comes to the regen braking, you're going to have 3 different modes. You can go with strong recuperation, normal recuperation, and then really no recuperation at all. And what I have noticed is that even in its strongest setting, you can't one-pedal drive. So you are going to get the regen braking that does kick in, but it's not so aggressive like we see from Tesla and other EVs out there. Personally, I have no problem with that because I prefer easing into this technology coming from a gas-powered car. So I do like having the regen braking kick in, but it's not so aggressive where I can do one-pedal drive. Now, some of you who are used to EVs, maybe you're going to feel a little different about that. Even in comfort mode, you get a lot of propulsion off the line, so it can get you up to speed pretty quickly. 0 to 60 times are around 4.5 seconds. Now, I do believe that Mercedes Benz does underrate their performance numbers, so maybe you're going to get closer to 4 seconds flat, which I think is pretty fantastic for an SUV of this size. Now, because we have the weight of the battery and also the electric motors, You are going to have a lower center of gravity, so handling is going to be far superior to a GLS or even a GLE, where you are going to feel some of the body roll. It's not going to feel very connected to the road, whereas this kind of feels like a lifted station wagon to a certain degree. It also feels like the EQS it's based on. So it has more of a sedan-like driving experience. And that's one thing you will notice if you start test driving EVs, is that the crossovers tend to be very similar to the cars that they're closely related to. And I think that's where these vehicles have their appeal. So sure, we have 8.7 inches of ground clearance, but you have the handling and cornering capabilities of a sports crossover. And that's going to really enhance your driving experience behind the wheel, especially if maybe you're going to the mountains this time of year to see the leaves change. That's really where I feel as though this SUV is going to have its value and worth when it comes to the driving experience and driving dynamics. Once again, going over those bumps, it handles it with ease. And I love the way the suspension feels and also the comfort that it provides, where it certainly feels like an SUV that's around $150,000. So it feels very much like maybe a premium luxury crossover like a Bentley Bentayga or maybe even an Aston Martin DBX in that regard, where you're going to be able to go over the imperfections and the bumps in the roads very easily and effortlessly. And that's what's really going to elevate your experience as you are driving around on a daily basis, where it feels premium luxury, it feels upscale, and to me, this is exactly what you would expect from any Mercedes-Benz in the lineup. So I have put the EQS in sport mode because I will be going on a highway very briefly. And what that does is it makes the SUV more responsive. The steering does get tighter. Also, it's a bit more agile as well. And really, I feel as though this would be the mode that I would drive in at all times, because this feels a bit more on edge and it grabs a bit more than vehicles that are gas powered or the gas powered equivalents, such as that GLS. And just the instant torque and the linear power band here just gives you a lot of enjoyment and engagement behind the wheel. So let's get on the highway here. Let's see what the EQS is made of. Oh, it's almost unnatural for a vehicle of this weight and size to really have that propulsion and that speed. It's not going to be as violent as what you're going to experience with a Tesla Model X, but I feel as though that Mercedes-Benz designed and engineered the EQS SUV to be very traditional to what a Mercedes-Benz buyer is looking for. You can get around slower drivers, no problem. And as you noticed, I did turn on the windshield wipers by accident there, but it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible what this SUV is capable of. Now, compared to the BMW iX that I had reviewed earlier on this year, how would I rate the EQS? And I gotta be honest, this is where I feel Mercedes-Benz put their money where their mouths are, where this really does feel like the future. It does feel as though that I'm driving a crossover that maybe is 10 years ahead of its time, because you have all these screens to interact with. The full digital gauge cluster, the infotainment system, the screen for the passenger, which actually does not activate unless someone is sitting in that passenger seat. What I love about this SUV is its size, where there's plenty of shoulder room. It doesn't feel very claustrophobic in here at all. Actually, that wouldn't even be a word I would use. It's very spacious, very accommodating, and it does feel like a GLS in that regard. Now, compared to that BMW iX, which the M60 would be around $108,000, and this is $132,000, this will feel $20,000 more expensive than that iX. But I gotta be honest, this puts a lot of brands to shame, including Tesla, because this is what you want to experience at this price point. And I understand that everyone is really bought into the immediate propulsion, the gull wing doors, the butterfly doors on the Model X. But this is more practical and sensible, but also a bit more conventional than what we see from Tesla. But also, this is one of the first EVs in this segment, or really in any segment really, that I feel as though has the full package. That with the adaptive dampers and the adaptive suspension, it rides so well. It rides like an SUV that might be maybe $20,000, $30,000 more expensive. It's all around smooth, it's all around comfortable, and also you have features like massaging seats, but you also have these aggressive bolstered seats that provide a lot of support, where it just makes it a great daily driver and road trip vehicle. That's something that we really don't have right now in the EV market. There's not that benchmark that we can look to and say, that's the vehicle that every manufacturer should emulate. I think the EQS SUV is that EV. I think we finally have gotten to that point. Sure, there might be a few things that maybe Mercedes-Benz does need to address, such as the regen braking where you can't one-pedal drive. But also, there is some body roll there too, which is not something that you normally experience with an EV, but I don't really have a big problem with that at all, because we do have the higher ground clearance, so that's to be expected. But besides some of the minor things that you could nitpick, this is just one of the most enjoyable EVs I've ever reviewed. And to be quite honest, this is going to ruin every review from now on in this market and in the EV world, because not a lot of manufacturers are giving you the suspension that's so comfortable and adaptive, where when you want to experience the corners on the back roads, you have that nice stiffer suspension where you can take those corners with confidence. But also when you are driving around town, you don't have the ability to really get that smoothness and feel that refinement when you are going over the bumps and imperfections. But also with the four-wheel steering, you now have a vehicle that can take on the tighter corners, the sharper corners in a city, or maybe even when it comes to parking this SUV, you can do that. And that's where the EQS SUV, I think, fits a lot of applications and a lot of buyers. But for a lot of buyers in this market, this will fit a lot of lifestyles, because even though maybe consumers who are in a more affordable price range at around maybe $50,000, $60,000, possibly $80,000 are going to say, I want to see 350 miles of range. I want to see, 400. I think for buyers who are purchasing a crossover at $132,000, probably going to find 285 miles of range to be more than enough. And also if they want to go with the rear-wheel drive model, 305, that probably will fit their lifestyles. But for somebody who is going on those road trips, someone who maybe is just going to the grocery store or running errands, or maybe just going on some day road trips, this could definitely work. I think it's definitely one of those vehicles that I think is just an all-around great EV that maybe the BMW iX just isn't giving you yet. Even though the iX M60 is going to be a bit sportier, this is more luxurious. This is more upscale. This is more of what you would expect from a Mercedes-Benz. And nothing surprises me when it comes to the design, the interior layout, the technology, because this is what we've become accustomed to seeing from Mercedes-Benz. And that's why I feel that this right here, I feel as though I'm driving the future, even though it still feels somewhat conventional on the roadways. And that right there is why I think the EQS SUV might just be one of my favorite EVs I reviewed so far, because it sets the tone, but also it's miles ahead of other EVs that we see at this price point. Maybe not so when it comes to the performance and the immediate propulsion, or maybe the more tech gadgets and gimmicks that we see from Tesla that a lot of younger buyers are really into. But the EQS SUV is for the Mercedes-Benz buyer, the older buyer, the more mature buyer. And this really is what I want to see from other competitors in this market, such as Porsche, maybe whenever we see an electric version of the Cayenne, or maybe even an electric Bentley or Rolls-Royce. This is at least giving me a taste of what I can expect. And I gotta be honest, the features that this SUV is giving us here, that's pretty phenomenal and fantastic, and really very impressed with this SUV. So if you are looking at buying an EV in this market and you can afford an SUV at around $130,000, $140,000, take a look at the EQS, because this right here is making a very bold statement and setting the tone for where other manufacturers need to be right now in the EV world. So to wrap up my time with the Mercedes Benz EQS SUV, what are my final thoughts and takeaways for this premium luxury EV? For the first time ever, I feel as though a brand put their money where their mouths are, because we often hear, and this has been going on for decades now, we're going to give you a futuristic experience. The future has arrived, or we're going to give you something you've never seen before. And usually brands tend to give us stuff that we have seen before. But the EQS is a completely different proposition. When I got the keys to this SUV and I walked in, I was speechless. For the first time ever, I was speechless because I couldn't believe what I was seeing and what I was interacting with. The full digital gauge cluster has trickled down to more affordable Mercedes-Benz products. Also, of course, the buttons that you see on the steering wheel, I experienced on the C-Class, which I'm really glad to see, actually. Some brands don't give us some of those features that go down to the more affordable markets. Then we had the massive infotainment system, this huge user interface, and then also another screen for the passenger, which that right there, I think, is unlike anything I've ever seen before. Now, Porsche does have something that's very similar with a Taycan, but I think when it comes to an SUV and for an EV in this particular market, I think we can definitely say for certain that this has just never happened before. We've never had a vehicle like this. Also, then that translates to the driving experience as well. Now, an adaptive suspension and adaptive dampers or active dampers isn't anything new, but the four-wheel steering for an SUV of this size is very beneficial because this thing handles a lot smaller than it really is, and also it handles lighter than it really is, where I can take corners with ease. And also, if you do live in the city or the suburbs, you can take on those sharper corners and those sharper streets, but also you can get yourself out of a tight spot as well. And when it comes to that propulsion, when it comes to straight line speed and overall performance, it's smooth, it's linear, it's enjoyable, it's luxurious and upscale. And this is what you want to have, whether it is EV or not, because I think we can argue what is the future down the road and what is more long lasting. But whether it's an EV or a gas-powered vehicle, this should be the standard. This is what we should be seeing across the board, especially for premium luxury vehicles, whether they're cars or SUVs. And that's why I'm actually rather excited for this vehicle, more so than when I was told I was going to get the keys to the EQS. Because having experienced it, having checked it out for the past 3 to 4 hours and taken it out for a test drive, this right here might just be the benchmark in certain aspects, and we need to see more of this. I want to see more of this. I think even though Tesla is going to have more range with the Model X, and from that standpoint is going to be seen as the benchmark or what brands need to be striving for, when it comes to everything else, the interior comfort, the quality, the technology, the driving experience, that's where I think Mercedes-Benz has pulled ahead in that regard. And yeah, I think we do need to see more range, maybe 350 or 400 miles, but if this is going to be any indication of what we're going to be seeing from Mercedes-Benz in the next 5 to 10 years, bring it on, because I want to see a lot more of this for sure. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more. Also make sure to follow me on Instagram at Boston Autoblog so you can see what I'm up to and what vehicles I'll be featuring in the future. And I will see you guys next time.